Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to move this motion. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the following motion, that pursuant to Standing Order 34, the Senate do adjourn to discuss the definite matter of urgent national importance, namely transfer of functions from Nairobi City County to the national government. Mr. Speaker, I know the standing orders are clear about moving motion and debates, Mr. Speaker. In this very exceptional situation, I'd like to ask for your indulgence under Standing Order number 1 for me to be able to reflect on my notes while moving this motion, because I spent some time to do some research on this issue, and that will save me the time, considering, Mr. Speaker, it is only 10 minutes we have. Reading will make it very fast for me to move this motion. Mr. Speaker.
The Speaker has discretion to allow reading, the mover to read, and in the circumstances you have explained, I'll exercise that direction, that discretion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
In your favor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate. Mr. Speaker, and Honorable Speaker, as Honorable Senators are aware, yesterday on
But have you moved the motion?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I have.
Okay, very well, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
It skipped my mind here.
As Honorable Senators are aware, yesterday on 25th February 2020, in the afternoon, the nation was informed through the press statement by the Office of the Spokesperson, State House, Nairobi, that in an agreement signed at the State House on 25th February 2020 by Governor Mike Sonko and Devolution Cabinet Secretary Eugene Wamalwa, with the concurrence of His Excellency the President, certain functions of Nairobi County government had been transferred to the national government pursuant to Standing Order 187, pursuant to the Article 187 of the Constitution. The press statement further indicated that the national government would take over the following functions of the Nairobi City County government: county health services, county transport and services, county public works, utilities and ancillary services, and county planning and development. Mr. Speaker, the press statement stated that it was intended to ensure that Nairobi County residents received efficient services, and it came as a breakthrough in running of county services that had ground to a halt. Mr. Speaker, sir, as Honorable Senators are also aware, Gazette Notice number 1609, dated 25th February 2020, was published, seeking to give effect to the transfer of functions of Nairobi City County government to the national government. The Gazette Notice notifies the public to Article 187 of the Constitution, as read with Section 26 of the Intergovernmental Relations Act. The Nairobi City County government has transferred certain functions to the national government via the agreement set out in schedule to the Gazette Notice. The schedule set out the deed of transfer of functions from Nairobi City County government to the Nairobi City County government to the national government. The Speaker, it will be noted that the Gazette Notice was published in record time, only beaten by the Gazette Notice that removed Governor Waititu from office.
Or the majority leader, I'm sure you have not researched on all gazettements.
Mr. Speaker, if any
to
member
know which one was the quickest.
Mr. Speaker, the one for Governor Waititu, we finished here by 8 o'clock, and before 10, Mr. Speaker, the Gazette Notice was out.
But there is no time given.
Absolutely. That's why I was hoping that His Excellency the President, during the Head of State commendation, should actually, Mr. Speaker, give an award to the government printer for efficiency, Mr. Speaker, and the fast way of performing its duties. And I'm saying this, Mr. Speaker, not it. Mr. Speaker, I am saying this because I know many county governments are still queuing in the government printer waiting for their Gazette Notices to be published. Mr. Speaker, the Gazette Notice communicating the purported transfer of functions of the Nairobi City County government to the national government raises weighty and grave questions of a constitutional and legal nature, particularly in the context of devolved system of government. That is a key cornerstone of our Constitution. Honorable Senators are aware that in short time since the issuance of the press statement, Kenyans have raised many questions on the constitutionality, legality, and effect of the purported transfer of the functions of Nairobi City County government to the national government. As the House of Parliament that is charged with the constitutional mandate of securing and safeguarding the devolved system of government, representing the counties and protecting interests of the counties and their governments. This is a matter that falls squarely within our mandate and on which the Senate needs to move with haste in order to give clear direction on the matter. Mr. Speaker, the Constitution in Article 186, as read together with fourth schedule, sets out respective functions and powers of the national and county government. Article 187 of the Constitution contemplates a situation where a function or a power at one level may be transferred to a government at the other level by agreement between the governments. This article and Part 3 of the Intergovernmental Relations Act 2012 provides detail on, amongst others, the conditions to be met before such transfer, the criteria for such transfer, and the procedure that is to be followed in the processing of the transfer. Mr. Speaker, I feel extremely nostalgic, and I have said this over and over again, and I want to repeat that I was a member of the task force on devolved government, and Mr. Speaker, participated in the drafting of the Intergovernmental Relations Act to give effect to Article 187 of the Constitution. Mr. Speaker, at that point in time, and Senator Orengo played a role in my being in that committee, Mr. Speaker, I must acknowledge, because he was looking at me sharply.
He appointed you?
Yeah.
Did he appoint you?
Mr. Speaker,
Okay.
he played a role.
All right, okay. It is noted.
Senator Orengo in the past, I would have given him more credit.
I can see the leader of minority does not want the details to come out.
Yeah. He's a more modest person.
All right.
And in the past, he has wanted to give more credit to others than himself. So Mr. Speaker, but I must say on record, in that committee, because I worked diligently, and I remember clearly, Mr. Speaker, if you read the task force report, you will find that the transfer functions under Article 187, we only gave it 2 paragraphs. And Mr. Speaker, no one expected that that is going to be a serious issue that would involve a function being moved from counties to national government. In fact, it was presupposed that the functions will be moving from national to county for effective delivery at a local level, Mr. Speaker, not the other way around. But, Mr. Speaker, I find myself in a situation, and I'm glad I live at such time as this, of witnessing the implementation of this article, and, Mr. Speaker, in the manner in which we saw yesterday. And Mr. Speaker, it's important that at very outset that we understand the effect of the purported transfer of the 4 functions from the national county, Nairobi City County Government to the national government, is basically that the national government will take over, in my estimation, over 80% of the functions of the Nairobi City County Government. And I will explain this, Mr. Speaker. A closer scrutiny and bundling of each of the functions clearly reveals this. In the case of county health services, Mr. Speaker, the transfer would include county health facilities and pharmacies, ambulance services, promotion of primary health care, licensing and control, undertaking that sell food in the public, veterinary services, cemeteries, funeral parlors and crematoria, and refuse removal, refuse dumps, and solid waste disposal. When it comes to the case of transport services, Mr. Speaker, it will involve county roads, street lighting, traffic and parking, Mr. Speaker, public roads transport, ferries and harbors. And in this case, ferries and harbors are not in the Nairobi County Government. Mr. Speaker, when it comes to county planning and development services, it will include statistics, Mr. Speaker, land survey and mapping, boundaries and fencing, housing, electricity and gas reticulation, and energy regulation. The 4th function is purported to be transferred. County public works and utilities and ancillary services extends to stormwater management systems in build-up areas and water sanitation services. The specifics of each of these functions illustrates the full extent and magnitude of the purported transfer of the functions of Nairobi City County Government. It's clear that should the transfer take effect in the manner anticipated in the deed, the Nairobi City County Government shall remain a shell with minimal functions, Mr. Speaker, to perform. Mr. Speaker, sir, allow me at this juncture to highlight some of the questions that arise in respect of the purported transfer of functions from Nairobi City County Government to the national government in light of these provisions of the law that requires attention of the Senate. The first relates to public participation. Public participation is a key pillar and recurring theme in our Constitution, Article 10.2 of the Constitution provides various values and principles of governance that speak to the matter of public participation, including participation of the people, transparency and accountability. Article 10.1 further provides that these values and principles of governance bind all state organs, state officers, and all persons whenever any of them applies or interprets the Constitution or makes or implements public policy decisions. On account of these provisions of the Constitution, which have time and again been reinforced through court decisions, public participation has become pivotal in the execution of public decisions and functions. Mr. Speaker, sir, it is therefore completely baffling and unfathomable that despite the express requirements of the Constitution, the purported transfer of functions from Nairobi City County government to the national government was conducted in an entirely opaque manner, with no reference whatsoever to the public gallery generally, and in particular to the people of the Nairobi City County. This is a complete clawback on the principle of public participation that is so dearly held by Kenyans at large. Even more worrying is the total lack of observance of Section 29 of the Intergovernmental Relations Act, Mr. Speaker, 2012, which specifically provides for public participation in the process of transfer of functions or powers from one level of government to the other. The deed of transfer of functions at Article 10.1 and Article 10.2 makes a rather interesting, passing and casual reference to public participation. Article 10.1 provides that the deed of transfer of functions shall be notified to the Nairobi City County Assembly, pursuant to 26.6 of the Intergovernmental Relations Act, and shall in the meantime be subjected to public participation. Article 10.2, Mr. Speaker, then provides that the deed, together with other amendments as may be necessitated by public participation, constitute the entire agreement between the parties. Pursuant to Section 29 of the Intergovernmental Relations Act 2012, Mr. Speaker, it would have been expected that the public participation would have been carried out prior to the execution of the agreement. However, this was not the case. Article 10.1 and Article 10.2 of the agreement appear to attempt on part of the parties to sanitize an already flawed process. These provisions, Mr. Speaker, are a total affront to the people of Kenya. The deed was executed yesterday, 25th February 2020. The views of the public are now sought on the deed that has already been executed. In effect, the people of Kenya have been denied the opportunity to decide at the outset whether or not the functions of the county government should be transferred to the national government. A reading of Article 10.2 indicates that that decision in this regard has already been made on behalf of and all they can hope to do is to propose amendments to an existing agreement. The people of Kenya were further denied the opportunity to determine at the outset, amongst other things, the scope of the functions to be transferred, the duration of the transfer, and the financing framework. To say that the agreement contravenes the provisions of the Constitution and the law with respect to public participation is, Mr. Speaker, an understatement. It's a total ambush on the people of Kenya, and in particular the residents of Nairobi City County, who, as is required by the Constitution and the law, should be at the center of determining questions relating to proposed transfer of functions from one level of government to the other. Mr. Speaker, the second issue of concern is the processing and the transfer of the deed of transfer of functions. The deed indicates that it was executed by Eugene Wamalwa, duly authorized as the Cabinet Secretary, Minister of Devolution and Asals, and Mike Sonko and Justus Kadenge are duly authorized signatories of Nairobi City County Government. A fundamental question arises concerning the process antecedent the execution of the deed at both the national and county government. The transfer of functions and powers contemplated under Article 187 of the Constitution and Part 3 of the Intergovernmental Relations Act is one between the national government and the county government. Accordingly, before the execution of the deed seeking to give effect to such transfer, the approval of county government would be required. The question then that arises is, what is a county government? Is the unilateral approval and execution of a deed by a governor sufficient to constitute the approval of a county government? This cannot be the case, Mr. Speaker. Under Article 176 of the Constitution, a county government consists of its county assembly and its county executive. Consequently, before a decision as serious as the transferring of functions of a county government to the national government is taken, it would be expected that the proposed transfer of function would be processed and approved through a county government organs. It is through such process that the requirement of public engagement and public participation would be met, as the processing would be conducted in an open, transparent manner, particularly through a duly elected representative of the people sitting in the county assembly. Mr. Speaker, what we witnessed yesterday is the form of the deed executed by Governor Sonko does not in any way comply with Article 187 and Part 3 of the Intergovernmental Relations Act. The execution of the deed was a unilateral decision that does not appear to have been taken by the county government. The purported execution of the deed by Governor Sonko is therefore not an act that speaks for and represents the wishes of the people of Nairobi. In this regard, it is therefore unconstitutional and illegal and for non-compliance with the law. Mr. Speaker, sir, the same threshold for the processing of proposed transfer functions will in equal measure apply to the national government level. It cannot be that the Cabinet Secretary for Devolution and Assets would sign a deed of transfer of functions without a similar process through the executive and legislative branches of the national government. While still on the question of the process followed in the processing of the deed for the transfer of functions, allow me, Mr. Speaker, to pose some critical questions which are yet to be addressed. Mr. Speaker, who were the negotiators involved in the process from both the national and county government? Number two, how long did the negotiations take? How long did the negotiators take in negotiation process? Three, was the public at any point made aware of these negotiations and of the plans towards transfer of functions? Four, did the cabinet approve the transfer of functions? Five, did the county executive committee similarly approve the transfer of functions? Mr. Speaker, sir, the third issue that I wish to raise relates to the conditions and criteria for transfer of functions from one level of government to another. Article 187 of the Constitution requires that a function or a power may be transferred from one level of government to another if the function or power would be effectively performed or exercised by the receiving government. In other words, there will require to be sufficient justification for the transfer of each function or power from one level of government to another, including, Mr. Speaker, detailed and bundled definition of those functions and an explanation why it is justifiable for that particular function, Mr. Speaker, to be properly delivered in which level of government. Mr. Speaker, I observed earlier that the deed transfers the four functions cited as a block without regard to the specific functions and powers under each of the four major heads, which are set out in 50th Schedule of the Constitution and which are in 19 in total. The deed in total disregard to 187 of the Constitution, Mr. Speaker, does not provide specific justification for the transfer of each of the 19 functions and powers. Mr. Speaker, sir, the fourth issue that requires the attention of the Senate relates to the oversight mandate of both the Nairobi City County Government, and which is in this case the County Assembly, and the Senate with regard to the functions that are purported to have been transferred. More so in light of the fact that, in my opinion, Mr. Speaker, more than 80% of the functions are sought to be transferred, several questions arise, Mr. Speaker. Number one, what is the role of the Nairobi City County Assembly in oversighting functions that have been transferred to national government? Number two, and related to the same, what is the role of the Senate in oversighting a function that is now already transferred to a national government? Number three, who is the accounting officer responsible for the execution of the functions that sought to be transferred? In effect, Mr. Speaker, having transferred the large majority of the functions of the Nairobi City County Government, do we need a governor for the county?
What is it, Senator Sakaja?
Mr. Speaker, while I may not have much to say about the content of what the Leader of Majority is saying yet, because he's citing a lot of interesting issues, Mr. Speaker, I have an issue which needs your determination as the Speaker. Earlier on, Senator Kaniria said we need to follow our standing orders and follow them strictly. Mr. Speaker, Standing Order number 99 is very clear about declaration of interest. And Standing Order 99 says that a senator who wishes to speak on any matter in which the senator has a pecuniary or proprietary interest shall first declare that interest. Mr. Speaker, it is in public record, and even in the record of this House, that the Senate Leader of Majority has acted as counsel to the governor of Nairobi, whom we are talking about, in a court of law under the laws of Kenya, under the land of Kenya, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, pecuniary interest is a matter where one may have any direct or indirect conflict in relation to a matter under consideration, where there is a reasonable likelihood or expectation of appreciable financial loss or gain to the person, whether or not he was paid. I think, Mr. Speaker, for the record of the House, that standing order needs to be followed and the declaration made, and then the Leader of Majority can go on with his presentation, which I think is also quite useful to the determination of this matter, Mr. Speaker. And I don't want to anticipate whether his other lawyers will speak as well.
Order.
We will ask.
That's not your job.
We'll
now.
ask at that point.
Your job is finished. You have raised the point of order. Leader of Majority.
Mr. Speaker, since I have only one page to finish,
wait a minute.
Can you allow me with your
Wait
permission?
a minute.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. The point of order raised by Senator Sakaja is an important matter on conflict of interest. I want to dispose of it right away. Yes, it is true. Standing Order 99 provides that where a senator has an interest in a matter before the House, he should declare it. And it ends there. Just says you just declare it. That's the end of the matter. Now, in this particular, so the question is, in light of what was raised by Senator for Nairobi, the majority leader, having been counsel for the governor of Nairobi, does that constitute interest? And in terms of, if you juxtapose that with his motion, moving the motion before us, I do not think so. For the following reasons: that the matter at hand is about the transfer of functions from Nairobi County to the national government. And if the Leader of Majority had acted for counsel in a matter before the House, or has acted, if he had acted as counsel for either the governor or Nairobi County Assembly in a matter before the House, not in another arm of government, in another matter before the House, then his bringing this motion would raise issues of conflict of interest. However, the issues raised is an important area which we must progressively look at to make sure that the House remains beyond reproach on all matters. And therefore, given the gravity, the solemnity, the seriousness of the matter before us this afternoon, I would rather we stop it at that. What I have given is an interim ruling. If you want to pursue that matter, Senator Sakaja or any other senator, in a more substantive manner, I invite you to approach the chair for guidance, and that can be canvassed perhaps in another session, in another sitting. So that, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The majority, as you conclude, please note, we want to give this matter a lot of seriousness, and I would like as many senators, if not all of them, to speak.
Yeah.
So you have ample time, yes, but
I'm almost there, Mr.
yeah,
Speaker.
thank you.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much.
Actually, ordinarily you had 10 minutes.
Yes.
But
you indulge me, Mr. Speaker, considering the gravity of this matter.
Yes.
So, Mr. Speaker, I was at having transferred the large majority of the functions to the city county government, do we need a governor for the county? Do we require a county executive committee? And significantly, Mr. Speaker, what is the fate of the committee members and their staff responsible for the functions that are sought to be transferred? Do we need a county assembly, Mr. Speaker, considering now the oversight function or the issues they are supposed to oversight, most of them have been transferred? What role remains of county assembly to perform? Mr. Speaker, these are important questions that require to be addressed. The fifth issue that I wish to raise relates to revenue collection. The deed and Article 55 provides for the purpose of general coordination of revenue collection. The Nairobi City County Government appoints Kenya Revenue Authority as the principal agent for overall revenue collection. Article 187 of the Constitution, Part 3 of the Intergovernmental Relations Act contemplate that the matters contained in the deed relate to transfer of functions between levels of government. It is not clear why the matter of revenue collection has been provided, Mr. Speaker, for in the deed, more so because this is not a function that is sought to be transferred. This is an arrangement that the Nairobi City County Government should put in place outside the ambit, Mr. Speaker, of the deed of transfer of functions. Mr. Speaker, sir, the sixth and final issue relates to dispute resolution, which is provided for under Article 11 of the deed. Article 11.2 in particular provides that where dispute arising cannot be resolved amicably through negotiations, the party shall refer to the Disputed National and County Government Coordination Summit. It is doubtful that the summit would be in an appropriate forum for resolution of such dispute, as parties to the dispute are already members of the summit. They would be need to have a dispute resolution framework that ensures that any emergent disputes are conclusively addressed. Mr. Speaker, as I conclude, allow me to make the final observations. There is an emerging pattern where county governors are arrested, charged in court for various offenses, barred from office.
I hope you are not referring to the governor of Nairobi.
No, not that.
Because I've just made a favorable ruling to you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Which now you want to trump on.
No, Mr. Speaker.
You cannot discuss the issue of the arrest of the governor of Nairobi because you are one of the counsels for the governor.
Mr. Speaker, I am
you
not.
Can't use the floor of this house to
I will
have
not.
a discussion.
I will not, Mr. Speaker. And I will not.
Yeah.
And I will not.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Speaker, that has moved to the, Mr. Speaker, various offenses. It's now evident that, Mr. Speaker.
What is it, Senator Kabaka from Machakos County?
I am concluding.
With due respect to a leader of majority, we're also lawyers and we practice law for a long time. The language is trying to having cautioned him not to mention the issue of the charges, even without mentioning governors, and it brings some charges are being faced. It's in sui generis, interpretation aspect goes with that.
Absolutely.
Please save yourself the face. The presentation is excellent.
Actually, you've
Don't
done
go
very
to
well,
that area,
majority.
otherwise you succumb to Senator Sakaja's trap.
Thank you.
Mr. Speaker.
You've actually done very well.
Mr. Speaker, the issue, Mr. Speaker, that the House must be able to determine is, Mr. Speaker, what happens now that there is an emerging pattern that, Mr. Speaker, functions of county governments are either being transferred to the national level or impeachments that are ensued, Mr. Speaker, as a result of frustration of county governments, and the effect of this, Mr. Speaker, on winding up of county governments. This is a situation that framers of our Constitution would not have envisaged. Indeed, even 2 years ago, we would not, as the Senate, have imagined that we would today be faced with a matter serious as this. The future of devolution is in jeopardy. It is time for the Senate to take leadership on this matter. I urge that in considering this matter, we do not think of those presently holding the various offices, including the offices of the governors and the president and all these other people. Mr. Speaker, let's deal with the matter without focus on as a primary objective, with a focus on our primary objective, safeguarding the devolved system of government. I want to insist this, Mr. Speaker, that I will request this House and the country to look at this issue of devolution and transfer of functions, not with President Uhuru Kenyatta in the face, Mr. Speaker, of it. Because if we do so, we will fall into a trap, Mr. Speaker, of saying whether I support the president or not. Not with the governor of Nairobi in mind or the governor of Elgeyo Marakwet County. I would rather, Mr. Speaker, we look at this issue dispassionately away from our personal and political relationships with the people who are governors who are holding office. And, Mr. Speaker, look objectively as how best can we safeguard devolution in situations that may come up, Mr. Speaker, like this. President Kenyatta is a wonderful man. He's a president whom I voted for. He might have had the best intentions, Mr. Speaker, in this situation, Mr. Speaker. We can't discuss the president, but positively, he might have the best intentions, Mr. Speaker, to do the agreement with the national government. But, Mr. Speaker, our evaluation of this agreement should go beyond focusing on president or future president. Look at the issues, Mr. Speaker, depend, and sometimes imagining if the worst people will be the ones who are holding office. And finally, Mr. Speaker, if there is ever time for action and vigilance by the Senate, this is the time. I call upon Mr. Speaker to urgently refer this matter to a joint consideration of the Committee on Devolution and Intergovernmental Relations and the Committee of Justice and Legal Affairs and Human Rights for urgent consideration and reporting back to this House within 10 days.
Is that procedural?
This, Mr. Speaker, I was coming to that. This, Mr. Speaker, is not permitted, Mr. Speaker, is not expressly permitted in an adjournment motion. But, Mr. Speaker, considering the gravity of this issue, I beg you, Mr. Speaker, to use again your discretion.
Then you should have been on a point of order.
To find this issue, Mr. Speaker, refer to a relevant committee.
You should have moved the motion, finished, then at some point
maybe then
raised a point of order.
Thank you,
Because
Mr.
you are
Speaker.
now on a procedural issue.
I'm properly guided.
Very well.
I'm properly guided, Mr. Speaker.
Thank
I
you.
beg to move.
Thank you. Who is seconding? Do you have a seconder?
Mr. Speaker, it's ordinarily not seconded.
We have to second,
So-
we have to propose, but there will be no putting question at the end.
Okay, then I, Mr. Speaker, ask Senate Minority Leader
Order,
to second.
Senator James Orengo. Order, Senator James Orengo. The motion must be seconded. The question must be proposed, but there is no putting of the question. So ordered. So ordered.
Mr. Speaker, I always trusted you are wise.
So you can now canvass, because I don't know whether Senator Orengo wants to second your motion or not, Senator.